rest of the Western world. Here, architecture, ideas, arts and sciences blossomed. As did commerce. Here, building after glorious building expressed each city's pride and power. Here, people of all nations and cultures gathered, drawn by the opportunities they hoped to find in a great metropolis. On the coast of North Africa was once the fabled city of Carthage. Founded by the Phoenicians in 814 BC, Carthage was a city of merchants and traders, homeport of one of the greatest seafaring peoples of all time. These explorers were from Phoenicia, an ancient territory, today roughly covered by Israel, Lebanon, and Syria, and home of a great civilization as old as the Egyptians. Their thirst for adventure and spirit of exploration is legendary. They sailed all around Africa from the 12th century BC on. Some experts speculate they may have even reached the Americas. The port of Carthage in the year 180 BC. This is where the tale of Mago could have begun. He is preparing to embark on a dangerous trip on which his entire future depends. But this is also the story of the prosperous city of Carthage and of its merchants who ruled over the Mediterranean. It is the story of a city that was so wealthy, it inspired envy and hatred. In the area that once was Carthage, now stand fashionable villas. Carthage has become merely a suburb of Tunis. There are no vestiges of the old powerful city, destroyed by the Romans in 146 BC. Tunis is a city of contrasts. Here, Africa meets Europe, and the present collides with the past. Modern Tunis is the capital of Tunisia, but it doesn't come close to rivaling the importance of the ancient city. Carthage was the hub of Mediterranean commerce and the meeting point for people from every country in the known world. Carthage was the New York City of ancient times. Phoenician seafarers and merchants founded Carthage essentially to support their commercial ventures. From here, they could control all of the Western Mediterranean. Eventually, the port of Carthage became the main trading center for the entire Mediterranean. Carthage was the seat of power from which Rome ruled its African holdings. But long before the Romans, the Carthaginians, descendants of the Phoenicians, had lived here. They had developed their own culture, known as the Punic culture. Professor Fethi Shelby has been trying for years to uncover the secrets of the Carthaginians. His finds from excavations only rarely reveal the city's day-to-day existence, but they are all the more telling about its horrific demise.
Everywhere you dig here, you find traces of the great catastrophe that destroyed Carthage in 146 BC. The layers from that era are colored black by ashes and charred wooden beams. Molten plates, weapons, javelins, bones, and burned skulls are evidence of the terrible battle that raged on this city hill. That was the end of Punic Carthage.
Among the most important and most mysterious signs of Punic culture are the steles. They were stone tablets erected at holy sites and burial grounds. They bear puzzling signs and inscriptions. Thousands of such steles are housed in the storage vaults of the National Museum of Carthage. For Fethi Shelby, this is priceless evidence of a distant past. The steles date back more than 2,000 years. These curious symbols are the direct antecedents of the Greek and Latin scripts. Phoenician seafarers brought these letters to Carthage from their homeland. This stone seems to indicate that a sailor about to embark on a long and dangerous journey would implore divine assistance and donate a stele for Tanit, the goddess of the city of Carthage, whose sign could be found everywhere. This skeleton of a young Carthaginian man was found in one of the city's mausoleums. He lived 2,200 years ago. His bones show no sign of malnutrition, so often found in mariners. He was well-fed, healthy, and strong. In the laboratory of the National Museum of Carthage, anthropologist C.M. Rudesli attempts to coax his story from these bones. Perhaps this man was one of the city's many merchants. The trading port was the heart of the city and the center for goods coming from all corners of the known world. The simplest necessities of daily life, as well as precious artifacts from exotic lands, could be bought here. Everything was possible in Carthage. You could get rich here if you were clever and courageous. As navigator, Mago is to sail his ship into the Atlantic and down the coast of Africa, looking for new mineral deposits. With hopefully some help from the gods, Mago wants to increase the city's fame and wealth. If he succeeds, he will finally be able to marry Bidiklit. Traveling by sea is fraught with dangers. Even after avoiding treacherous shoals and defying storms, there were pirates and slave traders to contend with. Mago's family might have lived here. The multi-story dwellings are crowded tightly together. If Mago grew up here, he would have played in these alleys, and like many other boys his age, dreamed of becoming as famous a seafarer as the great Admiral Hanno. In the 6th century BC, Hanno had sailed through the Strait of Gibraltar and steered south along the west coast of Africa in search of new sources of tin and gold.
Here we are standing in a Punic house from the 2nd century BC. Therefore, this building is 2,300 years old. It dates back to the time when Carthage had a population of over 100,000 people. Its construction is of a typical Middle Eastern style.
The Mediterranean climate fostered a particular architecture. The old part of Tunis today may not look much different than ancient Carthage. The Dutch archaeologist Roald Docter is interested in the ordinary life of the ancient trading city. How was Punic Carthage organized? First of all, he must get an idea of the city's layout. He wants to find the city walls. Many before him have searched in vain. On plans of previous excavations, he might find signs of their location. Streets abruptly changing direction for no apparent reason may have done so because they abutted the ancient fortifications. And that is where he hopes to find the city walls. Here, archaeologists have already dug 10 meters through the history of Carthage. The stairs lead Roald Docter past the Byzantine and Roman eras down into the remains of the Punic city. Are these stones from Carthage's old city walls? The walls that were to protect the inhabitants from raids by North African tribes. At the peak of Carthage's power, more than 100,000 people lived here. They had to be fed and supplied with water. The city had no river or sufficient springs of drinking water inside the city walls. However, Carthage's builders found a simple yet ingenious solution.
Their water conservation system was truly admirable. Each house had its own cistern. We have already excavated hundreds of cisterns throughout the whole city. The rectangular cisterns were very deep and were lined with a waterproof mortar, which was so strong that the cisterns are still well preserved today. Rainwater was collected on the roof terraces and flowed through clay pipes down into the cisterns.
Punic Carthage had no aqueducts. Perhaps the inhabitants mistrusted these large water conduits that could so easily be destroyed in case of war. The large number of inhabitants made Carthage a true metropolis of the ancient world. But all these people had to be fed.
Brought to you by IBM. On-demand business is here. Are you ready? IBM can help. Next week, Secret Television.
The marketplace then looked much like the one in the old center of Tunis today. Carthaginian fishermen sold their catch there. Animals intended for slaughter came from the city's surroundings. Many city dwellers would have kept poultry to supply their own families. The region was fertile. The ancient Punic seafarers also had to be versed in agriculture. They waited out the stormy winter months on land, sowing the grain that would be their provisions on ship. Grain and bread were their principal diet. This sculpture of a woman bending over an oven and baking bread, watched by her child, illustrates the importance of such commodities. But above all, Carthaginians were sustained by the sea, by fishing and trade. The sea was their true homeland, the source of their prosperity. The Carthaginian navy protected the trading ships, and its galleys were famed and feared. Looking down at the ancient city, one would have noticed an unusual round construction. It is the naval port, Carthaginians' best-kept secret. All that remain are a few remnants of wall and the port's perfectly circular basin. Awestruck accounts of the naval port have been passed down to us from Greek and Roman historians who claim that this port could spit out entire fleets in the blink of an eye. The Romans quickly realized that in order to conquer Carthage, the port's secret would have to be discovered.
The port was a very secret place. Since so many foreigners came to the city, the Carthaginians erected a high wall around the port to stop prying eyes. No one was able to count the number of ships moored here. The port was the best guarded part of the city.
The island in the middle of the port was the seat of the Admiralty, the driving force of Carthage's sea strength, which had established the city's mastery over the Mediterranean. Carthage's naval fleet protected the shipping routes and commercial outposts. The Navy's ships were commanded from the city, though they had to rely on themselves once they were at sea. Carthage's superiority was primarily the result of its experienced rowing crews and the navigational skills of the captains. They all did their utmost because if they failed, they could be punished with death by crucifixion. The captains returned regularly to the Carthage home port so that damaged ships could be repaired.
This port could shelter over 220 ships. On the Admiralty Island and along the harbor front were dry docks where the ships could be brought for repair.
Archaeologists have excavated one of these ramps from which the ships could be launched into the water in record time. But that was only one of the secrets of this ingeniously planned port installation. Hidden behind the rectangular commercial port, the circular war port was not visible from the sea, and moreover, was closed by a gate. So to anyone watching, the Carthaginian warships seemed to vanish into thin air whenever they entered the port. Mago has been at sea for months, and Biriklit watches anxiously for his ship every day. He should have returned from his journey long ago. The port of Calibia also owed its existence to the sea. Calibia was a Punic settlement, and like Carthage, was destroyed by the Romans. Directly next to the fishing port is the shipyard. Here, they still build large wooden ships. In antiquity, they were made from the cedars that grew in Lebanon, home of the Phoenicians. Ancestors of the Carthaginians, they built more than 3,000 years ago the first seaworthy sailing vessels and set out on them to explore the Mediterranean. They had mastered the use of their materials and produced ships that defied wind and waves. With their fine ships, they sailed to the west, establishing trading bases all along the coast, including at Carthage. Thanks to its strategic position, the city grew steadily in importance, eventually overshadowing all other Phoenician settlements, both militarily and commercially.
Carthage was the city of traders and seafarers. Its merchants were as famous as their Phoenician ancestors, whose commercial talents are mentioned in numerous ancient texts. Let us not forget that Carthage was an economic power of the highest order.
One of the Carthaginians' strong points was their ability to assimilate the influence of foreign cultures. The few surviving sculptures show unmistakable Greek and Egyptian traits. The Carthaginians were open to new ideas, a characteristic that explains their enormous success as a trading nation.
You are watching
Kirkwani, another Punic city, located directly on the sea east of Carthage, was destroyed by the Romans. It is puzzling that, unlike other places, Kirkwani was not built over again during Roman times. For that very reason, it provides a unique opportunity to learn more about the structure of a Punic city, and therefore the structure of Punic society. For security and conservation reasons, helicopters are banned from flying over here. So the Frenchman Alain Arnoux soars over the site by means of a parachute and a motor strapped to his back. Thus, the camera views he provides are absolutely unique. These views from above reveal remarkably regular layout. The houses are small and cling tightly together. There are no palaces or monumental buildings, no remnants of grand statues, no memorials to kings or generals, no triumphal arches glorifying grand deeds. But who ruled this city? There were no kings, either in Kirkwani or in Carthage. Ruling power in Carthage was in the hands of the Sespedes, two merchants nominated from their own ranks as representatives for a limited time. This system prevented striving for personal power.
We also know how Carthage was organized and managed. At the head were Sufetes, the political leaders of the city. Priests were in charge of gods and religious life. The priests are mentioned on funerary and votive steles. Punic society was very complex, consisting of the most varied occupations.
To a certain extent, a kind of democracy seems to have been practiced in Punic society. The Carthaginian state form was admired even by the Greeks, the inventors of democracy. Much about the city's management and the structure of Punic society we know from the steles. The inscriptions are short, mostly appeals to the gods. The donors are also identified by name and occupation. It was primarily the wealthy who could afford to commission such steles, which never mentioned the city's poor or its slaves. No ancient city could have functioned without slaves. Their muscles were the motors of the ancient world. Anyone could become a slave, through poverty, but also by being kidnapped or taken prisoner of war. Mago's ship has been seized by pirates. He survived the attack, but has been sold to a slave dealer. Instead of returning home laden with riches, the formerly free man has become a slave without any rights, abandoned by the gods. Where will Mago be taken? Cap Bon, the Good Cape. In ancient times, this was a fateful place. Its name conjured up terror and immeasurable suffering. This is where slaves and condemned criminals hewed the blocks of stone with which Carthage was built. "15 meters underground, there is an extensive network of caves carved out by slaves. Traces of their chisels are still visible on the walls. The caves served as both quarry and prison. Whose fate had led to slavery in the quarries of Cap Bon had forfeited his life. Mago knows full well that he is at the mercy of the capricious guards and that he would only leave the caves as a dead man. Yet, only one day's journey separates Mago from freedom and his old life. For ships leave here every day with stones for Carthage's walls. Roald Doctor's quest has paid off. With his helpers, he has actually uncovered the remains of Carthage's city fortifications, an amazing discovery. It was a wall of gigantic proportions.
The wall has actually been located. It consists of two separate walls, reinforced in between with supporting beams. Its thickness varies from 4.6 to 4.8 meters. It's a massive structure.
This wall served not only to defend. In quite a modern way, it divided the city according to different spheres of life, namely, into residential and commercial districts. Industries considered as dirty or smelly, such as tanneries and metal processing, were relegated outside the city walls. In fact, an entire industrial district developed there.
Im Industrieviertel Karthagos haben wir eine riesige Menge von solche
In Carthage's industrial district, we discovered, still lodged in the ovens, a huge number of nozzles like this from bellows, through which air was blown to raise the heat.
zu steigern. Und gerade an diesen Blasebalg.
These nozzles were examined in an Amsterdam laboratory. where it was discovered that the part of the nozzle lodged in the oven contained considerable amounts of calcium, which would indicate that they added large quantities of calcium in the smelting process in order to neutralize any impurities.
In der Eisenverarbeitung Kalk zugemischt wurde, die Verunreinigung zu neutralisieren.
Calcium was not used again until modern times to produce high-quality steel. Is it possible that the Carthaginians had already discovered this process 2,000 years ago? Together with other investigative methods, analysis by computer tomography in Amsterdam may provide an answer. The images confirm this bold hypothesis. The Carthaginians had actually developed a multi-phase process for manufacturing high-quality iron, a process that was only rediscovered in the 19th century at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution.
Damit wissen wir, dass die wirklich ein hochwertiges.
So we know that they were making a high-quality product which was manufactured on an industrial level. And since it was a large-scale production, they must have produced far more than the city itself needed. We can therefore deduce that these products were probably exported. What comes to mind are weapons, ship's fittings, and so on.
The city's artisans produced whatever sold well. They also copied foreign objects or whatever took the fancy of their potential customers. In the old town of Tunis, artisans still work as they did some 2,000 years ago, without machines. Small workshops like this also existed in Carthage. But even back then, there must have been larger manufacturers who produced goods intended for export. Carthaginian merchants were respected even in Rome, where Pliny the Elder designated their Phoenician ancestors as the inventors of trade. Mago knows that his own family is too poor to buy his freedom. Bidiklit is Mago's only hope. Bidiklit's last hope is Naber, a wealthy relative. He possesses the power and wealth to find Mago and to have him freed for her. The path to Mago leads through the slave market. Who bought him? Where is he now? How much will it cost to free him? Can Naber's money open the door to Mago's freedom?
3 Tuesdays on History Television.
At a distance of 4 to 5 days' journey from Carthage, once stood the city of Duga, an important stop on the caravan route into the continent's interior. From the heart of Africa came slaves, ivory, and gold. But these ruins are from a later date. As in Carthage, the Romans had yet again built their new city on top of the ruins of a Punic settlement. Underneath the Roman stratum, archaeologists from Freiburg in Germany are searching for traces of Punic Duga.
So far, we know very little about the early days of Duga. We found monumental burial towers that point to the prosperity of these powerful local families. We have inscriptions, but we know nothing about the history of the town at this period. And that's the reason why, over quite a large area, we are digging down to these layers of early settlement.
The archaeologists have found the walls of a district of artisans' workshops from Punic times. Most of the shards of amphoras that are found here are of local production. But now and again, shards of Roman amphoras are unearthed among them. Duga was linked to the Mediterranean trade routes via Carthage. But what lured the Carthaginians into the interior of the continent?
Was die Punier hier hergetrieben hat.
The Carthaginians obviously came here because of the region's fertility, where later, and probably in early times as well, wine, oil, and grain were produced. In terms of travel, Duga was easy to reach through this fertile Oued Khaled Valley. It was also strategically very well located, set high in a hill crest, with steep cliffs on two sides making it easy to defend. And the city also had building materials readily available from quarries right here.
These were good prerequisites for a city, and so Duga became an important urban center. The Punic Libyan ruler Massinissa had a majestic mausoleum constructed here, attesting to the region's wealth. For a time, Massinissa was an ally of Carthage, but in a struggle for power, he crossed over to the Roman side. A Roman coin. A few years before the destruction of Carthage in 146 BC, more and more such coins circulated in Duga, an indication that the Romans succeeded in attracting Duga to their side. Undoubtedly, the Romans fought not only with weapons, but also made use of propaganda campaigns. They spread the rumor that Carthaginians sacrificed their children to the gods on this religious site called the Tophet. Was the Tophet where such bloody rituals took place? Can these child sacrifices be confirmed by archaeologists, or were they merely clever Roman propaganda? Urns were in fact found beneath the steles. In them were ashes and charred bones that, without a doubt, were those of children. For some researchers, this is proof of child sacrifices, but for Professor Shelby, it is no proof at all.
For some years now, we've come to believe that the Tophet was a kind of children's cemetery instead. The analysis carried out on the contents of the urns revealed that they were primarily the ashes of fetuses or stillborn infants. The mortality rate was high, and yet children's graves are very rare in Carthaginian cemeteries. So we concluded that the Tophet was once a special kind of cemetery. Here, the dead children were given back to the gods Baal Haman and Tanit.
But we cannot entirely rule out the possibility of child sacrifice. It existed in other ancient cultures. Perhaps in times of hardship, Carthage resorted to human as well as animal sacrifice to appease the gods. Bidiclit's efforts have released Mago from slavery. He is once again taken back into the company of free men. The priest prays to Tanit, imploring her to support and favor Mago. However pragmatic the Carthaginians were in many aspects of daily life, they were nevertheless believers. Religion played an important part. Aside from their bones, various burial objects were also found in the graves, such as small figurines, oil lamps, and sacrificial vessels.
Punic burial chambers and their contents allow us to draw conclusions about Punic beliefs in the afterlife. Carthaginians believed in a life after death. They also believed in a soul which left the body after death and undertook a long journey. It was often depicted leaving the city of the living for the city of the dead.
The necropolis in Kerkwani, outside the city proper. The Carthaginians carved their graves into the solid rock. Already in ancient times, gravediggers were at work, but to this day, we still find the scattered bones of Carthaginians here. Gods and spirits dominated the daily life of Carthaginians. The god Baal Hamon was the patron of Carthage and guaranteed success and happiness. Everywhere, we find the symbol for Tanit, goddess of fertility and prosperity. Saved from slavery, Mago has again taken his place as a free citizen of Carthage. It is hoped that under Tanit's protection, he will return safely from new journeys to distant lands. Two sarcophagi in the Carthage Museum. Perhaps they belong to a rich merchant and his wife, such as Mago and Bidiclit. After more than 100 years of conflict between Carthage and Rome for the control over the Occidental Mediterranean, the costly Punic Wars must end. The Roman Empire equips a huge naval fleet and sends its legions across the sea to Africa. In the spring of the year 146 BC, the decisive blow is struck and the city is attacked and destroyed. Terrible events transpired in these streets.
The Roman soldiers came from the harbor and stormed up the castle hill towards the citadel. Along the way, they laid waste to all the houses and even whole districts, devastating whatever lay in their path. The soldiers forced their way into every house and reduced it to rubble. The greatest part of the population perished under the ruins or in the flames.
The Romans razed Carthage to the ground and cursed the city for all eternity. Never again were people to live here. And yet, a mere 100 years after the destruction of Carthage, the Romans themselves built a new city on the ashes of the old and named it once again Carthage. And it became the capital of the Roman province of Africa. If Carthage had succeeded in withstanding Rome, how different the whole history of Europe might have been. The destruction of Carthage has entered the annals of history as one of mankind's greatest tragedies. Carthage became a memorial of warning and a legend, a magical place that has cast its spell over everyone throughout the ages.